What's up, everybody? Shawn here with another Live to Roll Live. This week, we're going to be talking about a really important topic, which is transportation, and especially if you're not driving public transportation, if you're traveling, trying to find your way around, and all kinds of stuff like that. So we have a couple of experts because our co-host Tom is kind of expert himself, and then we have our friend Olivia here. But we'll do some quick intros. My name is Shawn. I'm a C5, C6 quad from a snowboarding accident 17 years ago. Tom? Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back if you have been here before, and welcome if you are new for the first time. We appreciate all you guys being here. And yeah, I'm Tom Conaway, C5, C6 Quad down here in Southern California. And I'll pass it on to our special guest today, Olivia, one of our good friends.
Hi, I'm Olivia Almala. I'm a paraplegic T10, injured about 12 years ago, and current and prolific access writer. So we'll be talking about that later.
Yes.
Awesome.
So, do we want to dive right in, Shawn?
Yeah,
Why
let's
don't you
get right
take us
into it.
out?
So one thing, so for me personally, I've don't have much experience with public transportation. So for you guys, obviously have used it. How long have you been using public transportation, and how was it getting started?
For me, I guess my first time was like around 2010, 2011. It was right after I finished high school. And I was presented with like having to travel like out of my hometown to go to like a junior college that I was attending. And I wasn't able to get a ride from my parents. There was no school bus or, like accessible arranged transportation for me. And the bus was it, Metro was it. And I was a little trepidatious and kind of scared for the first time. So my dad rode the Metro with me. It was his first time taking the bus too, and it was a cool experience. We rode the bus to my school, and kind of like went through the trip, and it was like an awesome introduction to taking the bus. And it was a wild introduction too. It was like an hour and 20 minutes each way. So I was
Whoa.
like doing 3 hours of Metro travel, like 4 or 5 days a week. So it was a lot of it right off the bat. Um, but it was a good experience, and it was super accessible. At least in my hometown, they just got new buses with awesome lifts, and there was some older buses that were in the rotation too. And those were a little sketchy. I got stuck a couple times on the bus, which we can talk about later. But how about you, Olivia? How long have you been doing public transportation?
Oh, geez. I started maybe around 2005 because the gas prices were going up. I wasn't injured yet, so I was a prolific bus rider because gas was just too expensive, and I had a 72 Impala, and that was half my paycheck just to get to work. But afterwards, I didn't really use it too much, just enough to know that I could do it, or if someone needed to use it, I could like advise them how to use it. And
Yeah.
it ties into Access Paratransit because Access Paratransit is a government program that's under the MTA umbrella. So they use a lot of access data for guidelines as far as how long they can take to transport someone, or what routes they use, or where they can and cannot pick you up. So
And
I've been
for
riding for
anybody
Access
who
about 12
is
years, yeah.
for anybody who isn't familiar, Access, at least here in Southern California, is a transportation service that is, like Olivia said, under the MTA umbrella. So it's part of the Metropolitan Transportation Services, ran by the state, the government, and it is designed, and the purpose of it is to serve the disabled population. It's a paratransit service, and here in LA that you can utilize outside of the normal bus, and it's pretty cool, and it's very useful. It does have some pitfalls, and it's not a perfect service. As I think all social services are, but we could talk a little bit more about some of the pros and cons of access. But is that what you mostly use? Is access services now?
Yeah, I use it 4 days a week to go to work and wherever I feel like going in the LA County because it's specific to LA County.
Right.
If you do need to travel to other counties like Orange County or even other states, you can actually transfer your eligibility if you plan correctly ahead of time. Customer service can help organize what you would need to do if you wanted to uh, travel to a different state because Access is a government program. So they do offer it in almost every major city. You just have to call and find out to see which provider offers it because all the vehicles are contracted, like all the contractors are transportation services. So, like in the northern region, like San Fernando Valley, you have MV, which runs like the Dash buses, the commuter express buses, and so different contractors run different services, but they can always help you get around. You know.
Yeah, I have also found that um, the different kinds of transportation like fall into the same blanket too. The other form of public transportation that I like commonly take is the train. Um, from here to like within LA to like different valley. Like I take the Antelope Valley line all the time to Lancaster to go visit my family. But I've also taken the train to San Diego, which is like a really awesome, cool trip. And they work with Access too, in that you can call Access, give them your, metro train information. They'll make sure and coordinate to get you, to the right place at the right time. The train, make sure that they have someone there waiting, if you need assistance and things like that. So, I guess what we can maybe start to talk about getting into is where do you find all this information? How do you how
That's
do
what I
you
wanted to ask you
see your
guys.
of these services?
You have to
Uh,
channel your thoughts and think
yes.
about transportation. No.
Nice.
So Access
Good.
Access has a website. It's accessla.org, and everything you need uh, before becoming a writer, while you're an active writer, and to utilize different things while you're a writer can be found through that website. So there is a process to become eligible, and all that information is on there, as well as the writer's hand guide, as well as where they do and don't pick up. And you can also call the phone number that's listed on their website, and that will take you directly to customer service. Um, and they from there they can give you answer a bunch of questions. Um,
Now,
but
Access
yeah,
is cool in that it's a service you have to apply for and have to be assessed. Not everyone is eligible for Access services. The criteria is generally you have to demonstrate a need that there's a difficulty in taking normal metropolitan services.
right.
I take the bus a lot, but I am also Access member, and I utilize Access. The My justification for it is I do take the bus and can take the bus when I need to, but there are a lot of times when it's difficult, like especially right now we're experiencing a heat wave in LA, and it is not as easy. I'm not as capable of going out, sitting at the bus stop, even sitting on the bus, and getting out to 110-degree temperature. Like within a few minutes, I'm having a hard time, regulating my
Right.
body temperature, and I need I need a more personal service, in that I need to know when the vehicle's going to be, showing up. I need to know that like I got some AC, on my way to where I'm going, and like I just need more personal service. So it's cool and amazing that I can utilize both, and um, I think a lot of people can find that they can be doing the same thing. Like they take the bus a lot, but they're not always able to take the bus, especially like long trips. Uh, I
Right.
I travel pretty far. LA County is a huge place, and going to you know from the northern to the southern side of LA is not super feasible on the bus. Even though it's possible, I'm sorry, but like a 5 hour trip with like 4 or 5 transfers between like buses and train services, and like going in between those places where there may not be accessible like elevators, or like curb cutouts and things like that. It's just
Right.
realistically feasible, um, but the cool thing about Access, that point that I was trying to get to, is they incentivize Metro use by making it free if you are an Access member. So I can now
Right.
ride all of the um, Metro services, including the train services within LA County, for free by being an Access
Right.
member, which is, I think, super cool and an awesome incentive to um, limit your utilization of the access services, and leave it for the people who really need it. And locally, when you're able to, you can take the bus for free, which I think is super awesome.
Right. So the
Nice.
criteria for access is like one, it's Los Angeles Access Paratransit, and it services all of LA County from up in Lancaster down to, I think the transfer point to Orange County is like the Disneyland location. So you could take it to Disneyland if you're in LA County. I'm just saying. Um, but the criteria, Tom is right. You have to live within, or the pickup and drop off has to be within 3/4 of a mile of a bus stop. So sometimes you're limited by that location, and there is a website on the LA County Go 511.com website where you can plug in your pickup and drop off addresses for access per transit, and it'll tell you whether it falls within the access region or not, the pickup area. And they do have the free fare program for people who don't want to take access for like maybe a 1 mile trip just down to the store or just around the corner, like to go see my buddy Tom who lives really close to me, you know.
Yeah,
Um, but it's a great service, and I I had a difficult time one time because they were telling me because I used a power chair that I wasn't eligible to use access, or I wasn't as eligible because I had more ability to get to a bus stop. But I'm like, you know, we have to self advocate for ourselves because they forget things like we can't be in extreme heat temperatures. And, LA County, they say they've invested millions of dollars to uh, upgrade sidewalks to make the city more accessible, but they haven't evaluated every single, place, and I've mentioned that to them where I said, if you're going to evaluate a location to go, I go, you need to put someone with a mobility device, a walker, a wheelchair, crutches, anything, because they say, well, it looks good. I'm like, yeah, but you haven't traveled over the terrain,
yeah,
so unless you have negotiated the terrain, you can't say that we have access to all of LA. So if you get denied or you need to appeal, people, you're all welcome to contact me. I'll give Shawn my number or my, email address, and I can help people get what they need because it's for everybody, Just because I have a power chair doesn't mean I'm able to go everywhere I want to go. So,
yeah. And Andrew in the comments was talking about this a little bit too. Not all disabled areas like service individuals with disabilities. Like I've gone on the bus a couple of times where it was just so full of people, like standing room only. Like even in the disabled seating section, that like there was just no room for me to even get in on the bus.
well,
Um,
now you have to stare at all
like
their butts.
That's
there have
yeah.
been times when I've taken the train, just the last train ride I was on, like the bathroom was like leaking, and there was like a sewage situation. It was like there's no other accessible train for me to go on. So like I really feel you and like resonate with like a lot of those feelings. The best thing we can do is what Olivia said is advocate and make those things known. I, like we email Metro, like comment, like send your concerns into um, access or your transportation services, or even to your local representative if there are no services available in your area, because there's only one way
Right.
that it can get done is if like the the need is made known to the individuals empowered to make those things happen, or to address the services directly and be like, hey, this stuff sucks. Like it needs to be better addressed or better serviced, or these areas need to be better like allocated for individuals with disabilities and things like that. So the best thing to do, and unfortunately, it feels like David versus Goliath here. But sometimes it is heard by the right person, and some change is made. So the best thing we can say is that advocate for yourself, make your voice heard. I did want to get back to what Shawn asked us originally. This information, let's say you don't live in Southern California and access isn't a service available for you. Let's say you just want to, you're traveling, you're visiting a city maybe, and you want to get around that city. What do? Google is your best friend. Google has an incredible public transportation um, service online, meaning they work and network with all metropolitan services nationwide in order to like make this information available for you. And all of it included with it is accessibility information. It will tell you if the line is accessible, if there's accessible lines around. Um, the other thing that I did want to talk about, it's more readily available here in California. That being said, I've never seen a wheelchair van available. Is transportation services that aren't public, private. So talk about like Uber or
Yeah.
Lyft. Uber Lyft, Uber Wave. It's called Uber Wheelchair Accessible Vehicles. There is a section on the app if you do have Uber. This is, I think, everywhere Uber is available, even internationally. And they've I've read a few articles how they try to set a precedent to make wheelchair accessible vehicles available. I've tried to use it a few times with some friends where we wanted to go, go to a bar or something, yeah, go somewhere nearby. Never was able to find a Uber wheelchair accessible vehicle. Lyft supposedly has a similar service, but I haven't explored it personally.
Oh no,
And then
I tried Lyft.
okay,
What?
what was your experience with it, Olivia? Have you had any success or
Well,
know
you know,
anyone who has?
I I did communicate with them to try to find out how do I find a vehicle that's accessible. And I think their definition is a little bit different because when I tried to book an accessible vehicle, they sent me like a Kia Sorento because it was a larger vehicle. And I'm like, maybe they think I can take my chair apart. So there's really no option to let them know you're in a power chair, just a manual chair. I guess because if you're in a manual chair, they think, oh, you can just like transfer it and disassemble your chair. And when it's troublesome. I did try to call them and let them know, like, hey, your services aren't fully accessible. And they're like, well, we're trying. I'm like, that's not an answer, but okay, thanks.
Like, do you have any
So they
plans to
haven't caught
improve?
up to it yet.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
tough, and that's always kind of the issue we're running into. Is I could see how it might service a portion of the disability community, but we're a pretty diverse bunch, and unfortunately, some of our needs are a little bit more complex than you know, like uh, like low para. Like I am never really without my power wheelchair when I'm out and about in public, just because that's what I'm most comfortable in, and that's what I'm most independent in, is my power wheelchair generally. So that's what I'm taking with me, and it's a hard one. Even I found with like access services, and like they are trained to service and cater power wheelchairs um, pretty easily, but getting someone who's like familiar and comfortable, like hooking your chair up and like not like making you feel comfortable and like not making you feel like your equipment is at risk, and stuff like that is hard, and like is kind of a weird feeling that I found, even with a service that's made and trained to service my population. Um, it's been difficult, and especially like taking private services. Like I've taken taxis a couple times in my early days down here in LA when I didn't know what access was, and not only is it atrociously expensive to take a taxi in LA, like it cost me like
No kidding.
$70 one night to get from LA to the Valley, um, like after a concert. But getting a taxi that's accessible, it's like a 2 or 3 hour process. So I'm sitting there like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, like waiting until 2, 3:30, like for a taxi to show up with a ramp, and that's hard. Makes you feel vulnerable. Like it's scary. I've always thankfully been able to tough it out like with a pretty good attitude or have friends that have been able to hang out with me, but it's tough.
Well, and
It's
then
Yeah,
not all
that seems.
taxis have built-in ramps. Some taxis show up with a portable ramp that's for a vehicle that's not low enough, so you're a little skeptical to get into the van.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that with the kind of makeshift setups before. Because I've never tried to access, or I mean, I've used access when I first got hurt a couple times. So I got signed up, just to go to a couple doctor's appointments. But I've never used a ride share, and I've tried a taxi in Vegas a couple times, and all times were not. There was a couple times that were okay. Actually, I will say there was a couple that went fairly smoothly, but it was definitely hit or miss, and not something I want to do every day, like regularly. So that's why, like, knowing how to navigate this stuff is super important.
Tips and tricks I would say for navigating it better. Like after my first like semi failed attempt at doing it, like I like got the number for the cab company and I called and was like, hey, I'm going to be in this area at this time. I'm going to need an accessible cab. Like, is there anything you guys like the dispatch can do to ensure that I have one in my area? And they were super cool and super friendly. And I called that same number back and would like talk to the same person, and they like got the person routed to me, and it was it was cool. So I would say like it's like everything in life, and especially if you live in the crip life, as I like to call it, um, you have to prepare, be prepared. Make the phone
Absolutely. A
calls,
lot of
talk to
planning.
people, coordinate. With access, it's a service you have to arrange 24 hours ahead of time, so it's difficult for spontaneity. Meaning like you can't just call them and get picked up. You have to like have your day planned out, 24 hours in advance. Know when you're gonna, where you're gonna be, when you're gonna be picked up. You can't miss your window, and that can be tough and it can be hard, but it's just unfortunately like one of the hard pills you got to swallow. Like I'd still rather go out, like have the experience, even if I gotta micromanage, the time a little bit more, and like micromanage my experience and have it all planned out. And I mean, I love being spontaneous, and I still find ways to try to do that. And sometimes it's just like access is my backup. Like I'll plan to take the bus, or I'll plan to do something else, but I'll still have like the access trip available for me. Like if I get stuck,
Right.
I gotta wait it out a couple hours for my access or something. And that's all part of the preparation that I do, and it gives me peace of mind to be more relaxed and have fun and have a good time, knowing that I planned ahead for those eventualities. That kind of goes for like Metro too. Like you just kind of plan and be ready.
So
Meaning,
Tom, in that case, so
yeah.
say you planned everything with your access, and then something goes wrong where you missed your window or something. What do you do in a situation like that? What's your backup plan? Do you have a backup? Do you just figure it out on the
Um,
fly?
well, this happened to me once. I booked an access for a restaurant. I was meeting some friends, and there were two restaurants with the same name. One was in North Hollywood, one was in downtown Los Angeles. And I took the bus to the one in North Hollywood, but I had booked the access to get me home from the one in downtown LA. So it showed up at the wrong place, and it was the wrong area, and they were like, "There's nothing we can do. Like we're canceling your trip." And I was like, "Okay, like, but it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm in North Hollywood. I got to get home. Like, what do I do?" And unfortunately, they were like, "We will try to reroute a trip to you as quick as possible." But they're like, "The next one we have available is like 4 a.m." And it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and it was a cold night in North Hollywood, and I was, just a quad out there on the streets, and uh, I just hung out. I was fortunate enough, like I had a good sweat, and I had my headphones, and I was passing the time with like my Duolingo, like trying to, learn some Spanish, listen to some music, do something to pass the time. And I called dispatch like every 30 minutes. It's like, hey, is anybody available? Like, did anybody cancel? Can you route anybody to me? And they got someone to me like an hour before they said they would. So I ended up, I had to sit there for 2 hours. And I don't know, like it's hard. Like, what do you do? Um, like, try not to panic. What do you do, Olivia? You
So
just
every
try to.
situation is different. If access is taking you home to the home address you have on file, they have to rebook your trip if you miss it. Depending on the time, the standard rebooking time is a 2 hour window. So if your pickup is at 8 p.m. and you miss it and they have to rebook you, they can rebook you for 10 p.m. There's also something called the Operations Monitoring Center, which is access customer service after hours. And you can call them. You can even call them after your van is like 20 minutes after their pickup time to say, hey, where's my van? I'm wondering what's happening. I've been told, like, because now there's an app. We'll talk about the app later. But, it's showing me there's a 1 hour ETA for my vehicle. What do I do? And they do contract with taxis, like van accessible taxis. So if the contractor cannot pick you up in the appropriate amount of time and they feel, if you say, my life is in danger, I don't feel safe where I am, I have nowhere to go, they can have an emergent taxi get booked that's not access services, but they do contract with a lot of local taxi companies. So it's something the contractors won't ever tell you, but you can call customer service and say, hey, I need to get home. I have caregivers. I have an emergent situation because, our time is precious.
Yeah.
We might have to wait for meet a caregiver, or we might have to take meds, or we might have a cathing situation. So it's important to know that there is a backup phone number where they can try to get a taxi out to you before an access vehicle if the contractor cannot provide one. And then going back to like traveling, it's like I like to use Google Maps too because I like to see the area I'm going to because now they have like that 360-degree like Google Earth
Yeah.
rotation where you can see the terrain. You
Yeah,
can
the
see
street
like
view.
okay, I
Yeah.
can yeah, I can make it over that. Oh no, there's no curb cut out there. Like what do I do? Or sometimes if it's a place that's too crowded and I don't think access will be able to drop me off or pick me up safely, I'll find an address close by and say I want to go to that
Hmm.
apartment building because it's right next door, and that way it's safe for them, it's safe for you, and it's fine. But yeah, the backup is always, hey, um, well, okay, I guess it's a good time to talk about the app, I guess. So they have something called Where's My Ride, and it's a part of Access Services, and you can, once you're eligible for access, you can go onto the website or call customer service and have your information made eligible for the app. And the app will show you what trips you have booked, your trip ID number, pick up and drop off address, as well as the time. And 15 minutes before your trip is actually due, you'll see an ETA on a Google Map screen, as well as a van number and a vehicle type, whether it's a huge van, a cutaway, a regular. I think right now they have Dodge Caravans, or if it's like a taxi. So it will tell you when uh, if it's going to be on time or not. And if all that fails, because antennas do fail and systems fail, you can always call customer service to say, "Hey, I just need to get an ETA because it's not displaying on my app."
Yeah.
And soon you'll be able to book from your app, which will be really cool. I think in all the regions except for the San Fernando Valley region and up north, you can actually book online. That's kind of nice.
Yeah. Lucky us, though, right?
That's cool.
Um, we don't have that luxury. We got to still call the lame number, hear the lame message 1,000 times. I'm sorry, it's not a lame message. They're just obligated to read this long, like prompt every time you book and
Well,
access.
it's done. They finished that as of June.
Oh, okay. But yeah, it's been a little crazy for a while. But in any case, yeah, Access, I'd say generally it's pretty great service. Like I feel really grateful for it every time. Mostly in the sense that um, it takes the stress out of the trip. I don't mind sitting back with my smartphone for a couple hours and chilling. That it is a shared ride service. It can take kind of long if you go longer distances because they usually pick up and drop people along the way.
You
But
want to
that's just
explain what shared ride means, like for people that might not know or understand? Just
yeah. So do you want to take this one, Olivia?
Sure. So it's not like a concierge taxi type service, just like Uber has the option for Uber Pool, where you'll have a lower charge because you'll be riding with multiple people. So Access employs software that does shared ride organization. So meaning I go to the San Fernando Valley to West LA basically 5 days a week, and they can pick up and drop off all along the way. So I might have a pickup over in like Granada Hills, drop them off in like, Studio City. And then usually if the dispatchers and routers are doing a really good job, you'll go on the same trajectory. And if you need to know how long it would take to get to your address, you can either go to the metro site and just like pretend you're taking a bus, plug in the day and time you're going to travel, and mark the option that says 3/4 of a mile from a bus stop, as far as walking distance, and they'll give you estimates of how long a bus trip will take you. Now, access services will take that information and say, um, we are allotted, like for me, I'm allotted 2 hours and 13 minutes to get to my destination every day. And I've reminded them that it's not a goal to be met, but a goal to avoid because it's streamlined service for everybody. They get more trips done, they get them done more efficiently. Everyone gets to where they want to go. And so I always impress upon them, like, hey, you guys are trying to beat the time and not meet the time. But because they're acclimating back to shared rides after the pandemic, as of like, I think May, they are getting back into the routine of like, okay, let's get these routes in check and make sure that they're going all in the same direction. So if you can always call customer service and say, hey, I'm going from this address to this address. How long will it take me to get there? What's the allotted time Access has to transport me? So shared ride is basically picking up and dropping off and saying, hey, you're going to make some friends along the way. You might make some enemies. I don't know. But if you keep it cool and no politics and no religion, you'll have a good trip. And always bring your headsets. That's always a good,
Yeah.
thing to do.
Always have your headphones. Always have something available, ready to pass the time, whatever it may be for you.
And if your driver's
But
cool, they'll let you charge your phone in their van.
yeah, but
Nice.
I'd say patience is key. It's hard to be a public transit user and not have some patience or learn some patience. I like to think in like certain or most environments, I can be a pretty patient person. But it's something I kind of learned. Like it's gonna be what it's gonna be. I always try to be like somewhere earlier on time, and that means like getting on the bus, like well before my intended time to be wherever my destination is, and like allotting myself a little bit of extra time for some of what might happen, be it like I miss a bus, or the bus is running late, or like I've gone to go take the bus and there've already been two wheelchair users on the bus, and there's no other
Right.
available wheelchair seating, so I just have to by necessity like wait for the next bus. And down here in LA, it's pretty great. A lot of the lines I have, there's a service every hour. Well, some of the lines it's like every 20 or 30 minutes for the local ones. But I end up usually taking pretty long bus trips. I'll like take a couple out like hour bus trips. Like multiple transfers to get downtown like LA and stuff. And I'll just like I said, give myself a couple hours. Like it's journey before destination. I like to say. I like to enjoy my trip. Listen to some good music, listen to an audiobook or whatever it may be, and always make sure I'm prepared for those few hours. Like make sure I have extra catheters in my bag. If it takes an extra long time for whatever reason, and like I end up having to pee once I finally get over there, or like I like down here in California, like if it's warm, like always have a cold water bottle or water available to squeeze a pour out of your body if you start to get overheat. And then for us, quads who know how hard it can be to get struck by like a blood sugar low, out and about, is have a granola bar on you, like ready to go, just in case you need a munch on something. And preparation is key. These are like things that I always like try to keep on my person when I know like I'm going for a bus trip, and sometimes that's every flipping day of the week, or it was before the pandemic. And I've been trying to get back to that a little bit, but I've found that be it with access, be it with regular metro, like public trans, or especially if you're in another city, prepare. And if you come across something that you're not prepared for, try not to panic. Just try not to panic. Usually there's a solution, even if that solution is calling like emergency services, being like, hey, I'm stuck, send a bus to come pick me up and take me where I need to go. Like call your non-emergency service line, and like they'll be able to come and assist you and help you. Um, and I mean, it is what it is. Um,
I
but,
think if you're a
like
bus user, also, I think it's good to know that you should get their accessible line. Like they have an actual phone number for accessibility. If you're a wheelchair user, put that in your phone. MTA accessible services. So if you happen to be waiting and the bus doesn't come, or it misses their allotted time for arrival, you can try to find out what's happening. Or you can
and
even
they
call
can
and let them know,
actually
like, hey, I got left
assist you.
behind.
At least here in LA, the MTA, they have vans ready to go that some of the metro supervisors have come and picked me up before and taken me to my
Mm,
destination. When on a really hot day one day, the bus, it like broke down. The bus broke down, or the ramp broke down. I think it was the ramp or whatever was dysfunctional. They sent someone pick me up. I'd circumvented the bus completely, and it was because I had that number on hand. Another night it was raining. The bus just drove by me. I don't know if they didn't see me. I stopped. They rerouted another bus that had just finished their line, and I got to like ride a bus, no passengers. They came and picked me up, and they're like, "What stop are you going to?" So having that phone number like armed and ready to go, um, really really great advice. And at least with the metro services here in LA County, they're pretty freaking awesome. Like I like to give them props
right.
because they're giving a lot of shit. I feel like. Um, but you know
Oh, and
that
carry a flashlight.
Is that,
uh, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough. Like I as like being like vulnerable, like in a situation where like you're trying to get home, and especially when it wasn't really your fault. Like their service, was dysfunctional. Like it's easy to get emotional. It's easy to like get on the phone to like the dispatcher or someone being like, "What the heck?" Or if you're like been stuck in an access for 4 hours and you're like tired and you gotta pee and it's like tough and it's easy to get upset, or like to rail at someone. I feel like, but a lot of the times, I don't know, like the bus driver or the access driver, it's not their fault. You're in that situation. It's the dispatchers. It's the algorithm. It's a computer that just arranged things this way. So I try to be mindful of that too. I'm like, no, make sure if I do say something, it's to the right person. Rather than like the poor,
And and and
driver
in
that.
the same way, you said you planned for bus trips. If you take the bus somewhere, you kind of have to plan the same with access. Like, how long will a bus trip take? It might take approximately that much time, And the nice thing, like, I think everyone with a disability can agree, as we've seen more and more, applause for the silver lining of the pandemic was that things became more accessible for us.
mhm.
We have online meetings now where we don't have to be in person. um, we're able to get food outside and not have to roll inside and get sandwiched by a door, where all your food gets all splattered. Things became more accessible out of necessity. But one thing that was great was, so I go to a monthly meeting for Access called the Community Advisory Committee, and they basically advise the board of directors. And it's nice to see what's happening budget wise, what's happening with like services, what's being updated as far as like how we're helping customers do better or get better service. And so it used to be in person once a month, but now it's open to the public. It's a government, meeting, and you can join every second Tuesday from 1 to 3 if you're available. And it's another way to be heard to say, hey, this is kind of a broken part of your system. Like, can you think about solutions, or could you possibly think about adapting or amending some of your rules because you're you're marginalizing a group that's already marginalized by their disability, and you get to meet boards of directors, you get to meet people who actually work for Access that actually make decisions that affect your trips and your routes. So
Yeah.
now all those meetings are available online too. You can go to the same Access website and go to the communities tab and find out when their meetings are, and get involved.
Getting
That's awesome.
involved is always the best thing. As I'm sure a lot of people in the disabled community know, these services are developed and designed often by mostly individuals without disabilities. So providing that voice, providing that unique perspective that only we have is very often like essential for necessary proactive change in some of these services. So um, if you have it in you to do so, really push you to get involved in whatever it is, whatever local public meeting it may be, even if it's not access services or whatever it is. Make yourself heard for sure.
Yeah, and don't be afraid. Don't think of it as a complaint. A lot of people think they're going to get retaliated against, or their rights are going to get affected. And don't psych yourself out. Think of it as feedback. They need to hear these kinds of things so they can say, "Oh, wow, a lot of customers are referencing this particular issue. Maybe we need to take a look at this and change the way we do things." It might be a specific dispatcher or a specific router or a specific region with an issue, and you might be able to help isolate an issue and help other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
that's really the biggest thing is you're passing it along to the next person. It's like if you don't say something now, then inevitably someone in a similar situation is going to run into the same thing. So it's all about helping out the community and representing for all of us. So yeah, appreciate the advice.
And
Now,
if you're
something that I
but if
want
you,
to
but
talk
really quick,
about.
if you're afraid to take access to a location, I'll be the guinea pig. I'll go to the address and figure it out for you. You know, let me know.
I'm down. I'm down too. That's what I've also like found is something that can be really helpful. And my dad was it for me. Like having a friend or someone to take the bus with you for the first time, to make it easier, or access whatever it is. Like access can be as intimidating. Following your injury and your rehabilitation as a bus can be for someone. But you are allowed to take a passenger with you, up to like I think two people, and having a friend or a family member, even another disabled friend, to go with you and show you the ropes, I think can be really helpful, and make it a lot easier if you're trepidatious or a little scared. And also, like if you're doing it the first time, plan to do it right. Go somewhere close by. You don't have to be. It doesn't have to be a crazy adventure. Your first time, and just get a feel for it. Um, and so Olivia, let me ask you, um, how how do you get around like the valley mostly if you're not um, taking access places? How'd you come meet me the other day for lunch?
I guess I'm a little older, so I don't go out as much or out as far. But when I was younger, I was going a lot further. I roll around if I'm able to. I mean, I live in a pretty densely like populated area with businesses, so I don't really have to go far to find things like markets, drugstores or things that I need. And I did meet Tom the other day. Just rolled together to a local
Yeah,
restaurant, because it's like sometimes you have to think about your priorities. Like, I need to be there on time versus like I'll get there when I get there. And the nice thing is that with the buses in LA, they actually have, I think there's a site called Next Trip. I think it recently just changed uh, web names, but you basically just log on and it locates you and says these 4 or 5 local buses are coming within these estimated times of arrival.
yeah,
So you can kind of figure out these buses go the same way. I can take either or. Like
is there,
sometimes I work in West LA and I sometimes go to Century City after work and it's one bus. It's about what 7 stops. So I'm not going to call access for like, a trip that's like 3.5 miles long. I don't like to mention too much that I take a bus every now and again because access will be like, well, you can take a bus. We're gonna have to limit your eligibility. There's a fine. It's a chess game, knowing what's allowed, what's not allowed, and knowing what your responsibilities are and what theirs are, and knowing the laws. You know.
come at me, access. I take the bus all the time, and I use access, baby. Like,
And they encourage that. That's why they have their free fare programs. So they
I think they
contract with
do
about like
exactly.
190 agencies though, where you can take a bus for free.
And
But you
why
have to
else?
use your card as a tap card.
Yeah, and I do. But why else would they, provide that if they did not want to incentivize you to do it? Like that's how I imagine
Right.
like that what they want. But in any case, I I would say if you are up for eligibility, or you're going for your access interview or whatever to see if you are eligible, don't mention that you do take the bus regularly already, because that will act against you, play against you, and just say
That's,
that you're afraid, you're intimidated by it. Even if like they'll make you try to demonstrate. Like, for me, like the biggest thing was I'm pretty like dexterous with my quad paws, as I like to call them. But they like said if you put the money in the machine correctly, like you'll like you'll be ineligible.
Here's
And
my
so like
best
I made
advice
sure
for
to
you,
fumble the
though.
money, and it felt weird and it felt dishonest, and honestly, I did not like it because
No,
like
it's
I was
not dishonest, and I'll tell you why. Because you have to
yeah,
act like you're having your worst day. Because being disabled, being paralyzed, you have more worse days than more normal people.
yeah,
You know,
True. Good
you
point.
bend over to pick up that change, you might shit yourself. I'm so sorry.
yeah,
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 good.
You know, you might have an accident, you might fall out of your chair. They don't think of that. We do.
yeah.
So my best advice, and it's not dishonest, is to act like you're having your worst day. You're
Uh-huh.
having bladder spasm, you're having leg spasm, you're having issues with pain because your
Yeah,
hardware is
you're having
infected.
mild AD, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. But it's not dishonest because it's reality. It's our reality,
Yeah,
you
and you know
know?
it's true. Like I have dropped money before. Like I used to, before I had access, like I would pay with cash all the time when I would take the bus, like back in Northern California. And I can't tell you how many times I dropped the money and wasn't able to pick it up. And I mean, fortunately, the driver or someone was around. But I mean, in I'm assuming like let's assume pandemic situations. Like I don't want someone else to come and pick up and touch my money, or like they shouldn't because it's germs or whatever. Like um, that's reason enough, to make it is difficult. Those cash machines are impossible to use, like
Yeah.
on the bus, especially if you're trying to like pour money out of your hand, like into the machine, reach up out of your chair and stuff. Yeah, like the fact that they even trivialize it by making you
Even
demonstrate your
even I fumbled the
ability.
money and I've got hands, okay?
Yeah. Um, So, I don't know, like that's like kind of a common trend. It's like not just access, like anybody who's like applied for services, like even caregiving services and stuff, like oftentimes you kind of want to play up like what what you can't do more, or
I I
even
was
like
gonna say that
show
too.
less what you can do because it's going to impact or limit the services they make available to you. And it can be really difficult when they shortchange you on stuff that you need.
Right.
Uh, but
That's
in any event, I did want to get back to talking about rolling. I am a big advocate of rolling around and being out and about in your chair. Now, this is very dependent on your like location. If you're in a more like metropolitan, like city area, it's generally a lot more feasible to get out cruising on sidewalks and stuff because curb cutouts are managed and streets are managed and regulated. And that even being said, living in a so-called regulated like city that's been like fairly developed, it's the wild west out here on the sidewalks, for sure. Like I mean, even like within a block of my apartment, going to like my Rite Aid, like I gotta roll off the sidewalk into the street to pass like a non-sidewalked area and like go like into traffic. Like it's pretty crazy. And I'm always mindful and I can always watch and pay attention and stuff, but still it's unsafe. It's pretty scary. But I um, was in a manual chair for the first few years of my injury, and
Mm.
I still have a manual chair that I utilize, and I think they're really great, for different kinds of independence. But for me, and especially when I was going out to school and when I moved out and I wanted to roll to the store and roll out to meet my buddies, like roll a couple miles down to the mall or wherever it is, I I want to be able to do that, and I could not in a manual chair. And but being in my power chair, and I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty awesome power chair. I know that could vary, but at least here in California in the states, I think decent power chairs are pretty available to even Medi-Cal, Medicare recipients. Um, and if you don't have one and you're eligible for one, I really incentivize it. Get yourself a power chair, even if you don't use it all the time. It can be your outing chair and stuff. But I will all the time regularly roll. Like 2, 3, 4 miles. Um, like to go meet someone somewhere, cruise back the same distance, and it's like it's fun and it's cool. It's like awesome. It feels like very like liberating to have the freedom to do that. So I always say like your best transportation is your own transportation. Um, whatever that may be. Um, but part of that's like exploring too. What has been your experience with that, Olivia? like rolling out and about. Have you had any bad experiences
Uh,
with it? Like, have you found it pretty like relatively like decent in your area?
I've learned to look at the ground a lot, as I almost went off the
Yeah.
sidewalk. I
That's,
almost fell out of my chair, like crossing a sidewalk. But yeah, I think it's good if you're newly injured and you're starting to get out, go around your neighborhood, check out different areas. I live by a park. It's nice to know where entrances are, and you start to find out what your limitations are, but also what the accessibilities are. I just started going to local places to see how well I could get around and knowing what the capacity of the battery was on my chair, if I was using my power chair back then. And I don't know. Google Maps, again, my best friend. If I'm going somewhere that I haven't been, I use Google Maps. I check out the terrain. I look for areas that are more accessible if I need to be, picked up, because sometimes I'll roll down and take a bus back up or take access back up, again, depending on if I need to be there on time or not. But yeah, just go experiment. It's sadly and not so sadly enough, your life after paralysis is about trial and error because you're in life 2.0.
yeah.
It's your chance to experiment again and to say, hey, and that's what I love about our support groups and podcasts like this and videos like this because we can share our experiences and we have a vast network of people with a lot of experience going back decades, and learning from their experiences makes life a lot easier when you're transitioning into your new life. It doesn't suck. It's just different, you know?
Yeah.
Do you have any fun metro or like access or like crazy stories to tell?
Oh, there's too many. I think there should be a show called Access, like The Office, you know? It's just a
Oh, for
bunch of
sure.
shenanigans and different personalities, people don't not speaking English and just yelling to make themselves heard.
Oh yeah. Lots of different personalities. One of my craziest metros like experiences was this was like when I first started taking the bus in Sonoma. If my memory serves, it was the 30 line from Sonoma to Santa Rosa, and I had there was a bus full of people. It was like pretty popular line between like two like main cities, and I was like right at the end of the border of Sonoma, so all the Sonoma people were full on the bus, and this old ramp came out, and it lifted me up onto this like bus that like I had to be lifted up into, and it was pouring rain, and the lift stopped 3/4 of the way up, and I was just
No.
in the rain. The door was stuck open. It was really cold outside, and I just have a bus full of people trying to get to work and school just glaring at me. And I'm like, oh God, what do I do? So I didn't know what to do. I was just like, oh, bus driver, are you going to help me? So they ended up having to like call the fire department. And they like ended up having to bring another bus. So I had to get lifted off the bus by these like two really strong lady firemen, well, fire ladies, I guess, lady firefighters, and we all hopped on this second bus like 40 minutes later, and like we're on our way. So that was probably one of the crazier like metro experiences I've ever had. But all in all, it's been pretty great. I try not to be intimidated. I always tell people, um, I don't know, like a lot of people are afraid. They don't necessarily feel safe taking public transportation. I've never had any experiences myself that, like, I mean, I've had a lot of strangers come up and talk to me, which, I'll just like have my headphones and pretend I can't hear them. Or if I'm feeling chatty, like I'll talk them up. Like I'm trying to like, not push anybody away if they want to have a conversation. But I haven't ever felt at risk or like in danger by anybody. I've like taking, the metro like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, cruising home from downtown LA. And there are a lot of like, it is generally lower income individuals, disabled lower income individuals that are taking these kinds of services, a lot of like homeless people and stuff like that. But again, like I've never ran into someone that, like felt like I was at risk. I do know individuals that have been in situations like that. Always be mindful of it. We are a little bit more vulnerable. I travel around with my headphones and my expensive iPhone on my lap. That being said, maybe like make sure your belongings are if not in your bag, secured on you. I know someone that is a quadriplegic that was at a bus stop and he had his laptop secured to his tray, and someone thought they would, come up and just grab it and run off, but it was secured to his tray and they weren't able to take it because it was secured to him. And similarly with like another person with a wallet on a chain, like someone came up tried to grab their wallet and it was secured to their chair and they couldn't. So simple things like that could definitely prevent something like that from happening. But I always try to see the best in humanity and mankind. There have been several times where I've needed help or assistance on the bus, and like without even having to ask someone, like will step up and pick up something that I've dropped, or like ask me if I'm okay, or whatever it is. So I always say try to, and this is the game that I used to play with myself all the time. Is like I play the what if game before I would go out. Like what if this happens? What if that happens? What if I miss my bus? What if I have an accident? What if I what if a million things? And I once I got myself to stop playing that game is when the world really opened up for me, and like I really discovered my independence and was able to push the bounds of what I thought I could do, travel wise, and going to see friends and going out and doing cool stuff that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. So I try to stop playing that game. I assume everything's gonna go according to plan. I try to plan accordingly, meaning like plan for some things I know might happen. If I think they might happen, I'll try to plan for it. But you know, the rest of the time, I try not to worry about it too much because oftentimes, 99.9% of the times, those worries are for naught. Meaning nothing will happen. It won't ever, come to pass, and you'll be just missing out on a good time. So if I can like leave anybody with any wisdom is, yeah, just do your best to prepare for whatever known outcomes you could foresee, but otherwise, take the leap, jump out there, and I promise you'll land all right, and you won't regret it for sure.
For sure.
Awesome.
Failure is your
Great
best
advice.
teacher.
And that's it. Olivia just said it. If you fail, it's okay. I'll tell you what. There's so many times. There's still so many times. I mean, even as recently as a week or two ago, like I've gone out and something happened, and I had to go back home, and like that's just it. Like it sucked, and like I didn't have a great night, but I did the next night because I, like wasn't too intimidated or afraid to, try it again. And sometimes that's all it takes is a trial run, and then you're like, all right, I'm a pro. The worst has happened to me. Nothing can come at me now. It takes all the
Exactly.
worry out of it. So, is there any other last advice maybe you have for anybody out there, Olivia?
Hit up the Access website, accessla.org, or go 511.com. That's LA City's transportation site. I think you can call 511 as well. But reach out to Shawn to get my info if you want to know how to get around. If you want tips and trips with access or eligibility, I'm more than open to sharing information.
Yep.
Yeah, and your I
Same
have
with us.
Olivia's Instagram is on the screen and down in the description, so you guys can try to contact her through there, or just email me or message me, and I can
Also, it's a
put you
pretty
in contact.
poppin' Instagram feed if you're looking for some entertainment and some
Yeah,
cool things. Definitely go give Olivia a follow. The other thing, since we do have a lot of people in different areas, if you are looking for services in your area, the word you want to Google is paratransit services, local
There you go.
paratransit services. All government owned metropolitan agencies, I believe, in like all 50 states, have an obligation to provide some form of accessible services if it is a metro service. That being
Yep.
said, there are generally a lot of locally specific services that, yeah, Google is your friend, but that's usually the key word you want to Google is like for accessible services. If not accessible transportation, paratransit services is what we're looking for and what we're talking about. So thank you everybody for joining us. We really, really appreciate all the viewers today,
yeah.
everybody in
Thank
the
you guys.
comments in the chat. Big shout out to our number one fan, Ben Tipton. for all their super chat donations today.
Yeah,
Um,
and thank you, Mason. Also, just dropped a super chat too.
yeah,
And
dude,
Ben,
Mason, you are
Ben
amazing.
shouted out wanting to win a smoke sesh with Tom and I. You got it, bro. You, I think Tom's up
Yeah,
for it too.
Ben,
So
we'll
we'll
have
get
to
in
arrange that,
contact with
dude.
you, buddy. And everybody else, thank you guys. We appreciate you watching. Reach out to either Tom or Olivia if you guys have questions about this stuff. They both have a lot of information, especially for the LA area, Southern California. And if you're in somewhere else, another part of the country or the world, just like they said, Google is your friend. Just search those key terms and really just try to find
Yeah,
any information.
I always like say like, and especially nowadays, like you need a buddy or a friend to go on your first trip with. Like, hey, I'll FaceTime in with you. We'll video chat like on your first trip if you're too scared to, do it alone or whatever it is. But if you do have any like, questions, just like how do you do it? How do you do it? How do we get out and take the bus? How do you figure this stuff out for the first time? It seems a lot more intimidating than it is. Yeah, feel free to reach out individually if that's your thing and if any of your questions were answered today.
Yep. And thank you guys all
Olivia,
for watching, like
thank
usual.
you. Olivia, you're amazing.
Yes,
Thanks for
Olivia,
joining
thank you for
us.
joining
We
us.
really appreciate all of your insight and information. And yeah, you're awesome. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and we'll be back next Tuesday with another live. And Brianna will be on this Thursday with another live for the Women's Disability Live show.
Make sure not to miss
So
that show. It's
check
going to be
it
a good
out.
one.
Yes. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. And live to roll.